rise and shine. Coffee's brewing, feeling fine. News is out and on the air. Shizzy whiz nuts wild, but we don't care. Morning whiz and coffee. Talk the news, he's a tease. Laugh it off, we're on the go. Shizzy whiz nuts, start the show. Let's go. Spinning in the breeze, stupid jokes, he's such a tease. Sip the Java with a smile. Pants are off, but stay a while. Morning whiz and coffee. Talk the news, he's a tease. Laugh it off, we're on the go. Shizzy whiz, let's start the show. Let's go. Hit it, yeah, oh yeah. Headlines spinning in the breeze, stupid jokes, he's such a tease. Sip the Java, wear a smile. Pants are off, but stay a while. Morning whiz and coffee. Talk the news, he's a tease. Laugh it off, we're on the go. Shizzy whiz, let's start the show. Let's go. Hit it, yeah, oh yeah. Serious is overrated. Every day we're caffeinated. Talk the town, but in a jest. Morning whiz is always best. Time to run. Morning show's a load of fun. Grab your mug, don't spill a drop. Laugh your ass off till you pop. Clock is ticking, time to run. Morning show's a load of fun. Grab your mug, don't spill a drop. Laugh your ass off till you pop.
Oh my god, Shizzy breaks Larry. Shizzy broke Larry.
Oh yeah.
I'm hunting rabbit. Let's try that again. Hey, somebody has to boomer it around here, doggone it, and it might as well be me. I love it. You look happy, buddy. You talking to yourself? Yes, I talk to myself all the time. You guys just get to listen to the voices inside my head. That's what it is. Yes, somebody was somebody was asking, who is expert? Who is the expert? The expert's good people. Expert's good people. If you haven't subbed up to him, go sub up to the man. He definitely has a lot to tell you, and he is the expert. Just know that. Mm. Oh, good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yes, I just saw the news that there was an earthquake in New Mexico on Friday. Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a crazy, crazy thing to have. It doesn't happen often. Um, but that Permian Basin is a real, real, real booger. There are earthquakes that happen in that area. Not often, but they do happen. That gave you a good laugh. Well, at least I'm good for something. Most of the time I'm told, "You're good for nothing. You good for nothing." So, you think there was an earthquake in Japan? Well, that happens. That happens. There is earthquakes that happen. Welcome, welcome, welcome to another wonderful, wonderful morning. So, first we have to ask ourselves, we really must ask ourselves, what in the hell is wrong with CBS News? The weekendus horribilis, with apologies to anyone who actually knows Latin, at CBS News was a marvel to behold, as though Division Chief Wendy McMahon had spent days carefully laying a field full of rakes before donning clown shoes and dancing across the field to Ricky Martin's "Livin' in Livin' La Vida Loca." As I'm sure you're already aware, things kicked off Sunday morning with the social media backlash. I need a better, happier word than backlash to face the nation's host Margaret Brennan insisting to Secretary of State Mark Rubio that the problem with the Yahtzees was all their free speech. Now, Sarah Anderson had that story for you in near real time yesterday. And let me see, I think I was going to cover that yesterday. Oh, yes, here it is. And that story was this right here. Did you see what happens? I have 7 babies coming tomorrow. Awesome. Congratulations. Secretary of State Marco Rubio hit the ground running with a quick yet productive trip to Latin America earlier this month while simultaneously taking over as acting director of USAID. And it seems like he hasn't slowed down since. On top of that, on Thursday, while flying to Germany to meet with Vice President J.D. Vance and Ukraine President Zelensky, he attended the Munich Security Conference. There was a mechanical failure on his plane, and he was forced to turn around mid-flight and board another plane in order to get to Europe on time. And this weekend, he spent much of his time meeting with numerous foreign ministers before taking his first trip to the Middle East as Secretary of the State, meeting with various Israeli officials, including President Isaac Herzog, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. My point is that this man is probably pretty tired, but he still managed to take time out of his busy schedule on Sunday to generously appear on Face the Nation with Margaret Brennan. I'm sure he expected plenty of dumb questions. It is Margaret Brennan's fault after all, but what he probably didn't expect was having to teach her a basic history lesson. After talking about the Middle East a bit, Brennan asked Rubio about Vance's now infamous speech from last week in which he lectured Europeans on the topics of free speech and censorship. She seemed a bit concerned that he was irritating our allies, and Rubio responded with a fair and common sense answer. Why would our allies or anybody be irritated by free speech by letting someone give their opinion? We are, after all, democracies. The Munich Security Conference is largely a conference of democracies in which one of the things that we cherish and value is the ability to speak freely and provide your opinions. And so I think if anyone's angry about his words, they don't have to agree with him. But to be angry about it, I think actually makes his point. I thought it was actually a pretty historic speak, whether you agree with him or not. I think the valid points he's making to Europe, as we are concerned that the true values that we share, the values that bind us together with Europe, are the things like free speech and democracy and our shared history and winning 2 world wars, defeating communism, Soviet communism, and the like. These are values that we have shared in common, and in that Cold War, we fought against things like censorship and oppression and so forth. But Brennan being Brennan wasn't happy with this. At this point, I'm not sure if this woman is biased, ignorant, or just plain stupid, But she went on to say, "You know who else liked free speech was the little Austrian painter." Okay, I'm paraphrasing a bit, but this is what she actually said. Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide, and he met with the head of a political party that has far right-wing views and some historic ties to extreme groups in the context of that was changing the tone of it, and you know that the censorship was specifically about the right. Rubio, who admittedly does look a little tired from his whirlwind travels, responded like an exhausted yet patient father who just got home from work and whose 14-year-old daughter just asked him for permission to have a new gender-neutral pronouns tattooed on her arm. Well, I have to disagree with you. No, no, I have to disagree with you, he said before launching into a history lesson that is something I think most people learn by middle school at the least, not lately. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Yahtzee regime that happened to be also genocidal because they hated the Jews and they hated the minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people that they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Yahtzee Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Yahtzee Germany. They were a sole and only party that governed that country, so that's not an accurate reflection of history. And Rubio continues after that, getting a bit more in depth about free speech and what Vance said in Europe. But Brendan was suddenly out of time. I'm sure that was entirely coincidental after he made her look like a complete and utter bibbling idiot. You can watch that part of the exchange for yourself or read the transcript on the State Department's website. I think we'll just watch it here.
Well, he was standing in a country where free speech was weaponized to conduct a genocide. And he met with the head of a political party that has far right views and some historic ties to extreme groups. The context of that was changing the tone of it. And you know that the censorship
I have to disagree with
was
you.
specifically about the right.
No, I have to disagree with you. Free speech was not used to conduct a genocide. The genocide was conducted by an authoritarian Nazi regime that happened to also be genocidal because they hated Jews and they hated minorities and they hated those that they had a list of people they hated, but primarily the Jews. There was no free speech in Nazi Germany. There was none. There was also no opposition in Nazi Germany. They were a sole and only party that governed that country. So that's not an accurate reflection of history.
Exactly. Little Marco Rubio hit it. And to further hammer home Rubio's point and Brennan's ignorant stupidity, bias, whatever you want to call it, here's a blurb from the Holocaust Encyclopedia entry on censorship. When the Yazidis came into power in 1933, the German Constitution guaranteed freedom of speech and freedom of the press. Though degrees in laws, the Yazidis abolished these civil rights and destroyed German democracy. And starting in 1934, it was illegal to criticize the Yazidi government. Even telling a joke about the little mustachioed man was considered treachery. People in Yazidi Germany could not say or write whatever they wanted. Examples of censorship under the Yazidis included closing down or taking over the anti-Yazidi newspapers, controlling what news appeared in newspapers, on the radio, and in newsreels, banning and burning books that the Yazidis categorized as un-German, controlling what soldiers wrote home during the World War II. So, as Eric Erickson wrote on his Substack, to have an elite member of the American political press corps whose major news source gives her airtime to utter such a falsehood is not just journalistic malpractice, but misfeasance with a microphone. Good morning. Good to see you, Stacy. Good to see everyone. Name the far right you use, ma'am. Exactly. Exactly. That's the problem that they can't do. Now, Sarah still was on top of that. And today, Victoria Taft nailed it with her column, echoing the principle in Billy Madison. Margaret Rubio could have said, "What you've just said is one of the most insane, idiotic things I've ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it." My only issue with Victoria's column is that it didn't write it. Reading the whole thing if you haven't already, but that's the first of many dozen rakes CBS stepped on last week. His favorite moment was probably when 60 Minutes celebrated German fascists by doing genuinely fascist stuff. Yeah,
It's 6:01.
that is what German state police are doing. Sunday morning, CBS News bemoaned how the little mustachioed German was all or Austrian, I should say, was, all free speechy. Sunday evening, CBS News pondered the proper limits on free speech enforced by well-armed state police. And we'll just, without boundaries, a very small group of people can rely on endless freedom to say anything, that they want while everyone else is scared and intimidated. From CEO of Hate Aid, a Berlin-based human rights organization supporting victims of online violence. And I'm not even getting to Ballin's weird insistence that the solution of people self-censoring out of fear is to give them something to be really frightened of. And that was part of the segment showing the German police conducting a huge armed raid on some rando for posting a racist cartoon online. They actually did the Parks and Recs meme, and I'm not gonna show that particular one. Capping things off was a puff piece interview with Christina Dry, a distressed underline of deep state functionary, Samantha Power. People are really scared, Dry wine. 12 days ago, people wonder where their next paycheck is coming from. They knew they were going to pay for their kids' daycare, their medical bills, and then all gone overnight. And welcome to the real world. We've seen what USAID did with our money. In most countries around the world, there would be thousands of backs up against various walls for the scale of corruption and outright theft. Media critic Western Lensman says that CBS News may have overtaken MSNBC and CNN on the premiere of anti-American DNC propaganda outlet in all the land. But I'm not sure that's the case since Walter Cronkite, CBS News has always been anti-American DNC propaganda outlet. Maybe it's just that McMahon's crew is so laughably ignorant and ham-fisted with their anti-American DNC propaganda. Or maybe they just enjoy dancing on a field of rakes. Wow, I never thought I'd see Germany go down this road again. Well, America started going down that same road for the past 4 years. Think about what you're allowed to say on even platforms like YouTube. YouTube censors. YouTube censors a lot, although they are not wanting to be considered publishers, they're still publishers. They can shut down my stream anytime they want to. They can literally shut it down if I say the wrong word, if I mention a certain person, if I talk about certain things, if I say anything that goes against what the media wants you to tell people. And you have to remember that for the past 4 years, it was absolutely uh a copyrighted not a copyrighted offense, but they would shut down your channel. They would they would they would ban it from ever airing. I've got a stream where I showed something that was um not appropriate for YouTube. What was it? It was talking about it said medical disinformation. Was it medical disinformation? We know now that it wasn't. Do you think they'll bring that piece back, that it'll ever be allowed to be showed again? It was a morning stream that got shut down. Not because the whole stream was about that. It was because I didn't show both sides of it, and they considered it medical information, misinformation. Although I don't purport to be a doctor or a lawyer or anything. I mean, I'm just somebody that reads a story, shows memes, but they shut it down. Yeah, please. That's right. And I'm not saying you should go out there and insult people, but I would say that was a pretty big insult to tell me that, "Oh, no, you can't talk about that. That is medical misinformation," and it wasn't. We know now that it wasn't at all. But I'll never gain the views off of that again. Oh, and what outlet do I have to say that? You can go watch it. It's on Rumble still. That YouTube will shut down what you talk about. They will hush you up if they don't like what you're saying. And this is the fear that they put into people. And it's no different than what they're doing in Germany. If you have somebody that says something that they don't like, they will come knocking on your door. They will confiscate all of your electronic devices because of what they consider to be hate. They don't want the truth to be shown. They don't want people to know exactly what is going on. But we also have this one right here. Same, basically the same story. Margaret, everyone in this country is now dumber for having listened to you. What you've just said is the most insane, idiotic thing that I've ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul, was the principal to Billy Madison. Margaret Brennan has been a sop for the left since before she was plucked from CBS depth chart to become a starter on Face the Nation. Brennan has made some famous blunders since her ascendance to the big boy chair on Sunday morning, but it's a pretty tough to best Sunday's Biff test where she completely retconned World War II. The University of Virginia graduated as also the network's chief foreign affairs correspondent and a contributing correspondent to 60 Minutes, and brings to her coverage of domestic politics a background in national security and financial news. When she's not hosting the Sunday show, according to her official bio, I hasten to add that Brennan is a board member of the Council on Foreign Relations, which will become even more ironic in a moment. Recently, Americans were regulated with Brennan's support of illegal aliens in a discussion with Vice President J.D. Vance. Brennan tried to convince Vance of how all of Joe Biden's asylum-seeking aliens were vetted and perfectly fine to be in the country, and Vance corrected the record, saying, well, we'll just watch. We'll just
Well, Margaret,
watch.
I don't agree that all these immigrants or all these refugees have been properly vetted. In fact, we know that there are cases of people who allegedly were properly vetted and then were literally planning terrorist attacks on our country. That happened during the campaign, if you may remember. So clearly not all of these foreign nationals have been properly vetted.
But there are 30,000 people in the pipeline, Afghan refugees.
But my primary
Do you stand by
concern
it?
as the vice president, Margaret, is to look after the American people. And now that we know that we have vetting problems with a lot of these refugee programs, we absolutely cannot unleash thousands of unvetted people into our country.
These people
it's
are
not
vetted.
good.
These people are vetted.
Just like the guy who planned a terrorist attack in Oklahoma a few months ago, he was allegedly properly vetted, and many people in the media and the Democratic Party said that he was properly vetted. Clearly he wasn't. I don't want my children to share a neighborhood with people who are not properly vetted, and because I don't want it for my kids, I'm not going to force any other American citizens' kids to do that either.
No, and that was a very particular case. It wasn't clear if he was radicalized when he got here or while he was living here.
I don't really care, Margaret. I don't want that person in my country, and I think most Americans agree with me.
Sweetheart.
We'll be back in 1 minute.
Uh-huh. She even demanded that Vance answer for why President Trump hadn't yet brought down grocery prices, and after 5 days in office, Vance went to Europe to explain how the U.S. and the West should lead in AI, which, while also rebuking the lefty Europeans for censoring free speech on the internet and in real life. People in the UK and Germany are jailed for saying mean things on the interwebs. In fact, 60 Minutes, people in the UK and Germany treated on Germany's policies of raiding people's homes, taking away their phones, and even jailing them for being rude on the internet. Yeah. With these things in mind, we come to Margaret Brennan on Sunday, having that speech that we just showed you. Little did we know that Joseph Goebbels began his propaganda campaigns and programs against the Jews on behalf of the little Austrian artist. and his National Socialist Party of Germany, the Yahtzee Party. The Yahtzee Holocaust was done in furtherance of free speech. Jews were deprived of their businesses, their children, and their lives, but it was done under a campaign of weaponizing free speech. How could we never have seen this before? Though Rubio could have scoffed and could have scoffed and laughed at her, which would have been understandable, he said, free speech was not used to conduct genocide. We would well be within our rights to tell her what the principal told Billy Madison. And Margaret Rubio could have said, what you just said is one of the most insane, idiotic things I could have ever heard. May God have mercy on your soul. Victoria Taft, thank you so much. She is a award-winning journalist, writer, terrestrial radio talk show host. Heard in Seattle and on the rest of the left coast. Listen to her twice weekly. She does have a podcast, Adult in the Room, victoriataft.com. You can find her on Getter, Minds, Locals, Twitter, Facebook. Her book, Mocking Antifa, will be out next year. Your media inquiries, write her at victoriataft.com. Sorry to hear you have been sick, Betsy Weingartner. I mean, that really, really sucks. Tinkerloo, Skittles misses you. Good morning, everybody. Welcome, you fine, beautiful people. Yeah, we're just here having a good time. Having a good time. I hope you're having a good time also. Yes, there was on Friday last week, there was an earthquake in Roswell, New Mexico, not too far from Pecos in the Permian Basin. It is crazy, crazy times out there. The earth cools, the earth warms. Guess what? It gets a little shooken up sometimes. Biden weaponized the IRS against Trump nominee before leaving the White House. How does this work? Joe Biden weaponized the Justice Department against Donald Trump and Trump supporters. It should come as no surprise that on his way out the door, he decided to weaponize the IRS against incoming Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Hegseth revealed on Monday afternoon that Biden administration flagged him on an IRS audit. Of course, the outgoing Biden IRS rushed an audit of the incoming Secretary of Defense. He wrote on Post X, total sham. The party of norms and decency strikes again, will never back down. According to the document, the family's federal income tax return indicated that they owed the federal government about $33,558. 33,000, is that right? 33,000, yeah, $33,556.16, which they paid right away to prevent any additional penalties. Hegseth was one of the first people Trump nominated to serve as administration. I'm honored to announce that I have nominated Pete Hegseth to serve as my cabinet as Secretary of Defense. Pete has spent his entire life as a warrior for the troops and for the country. Pete is tough, smart, and a true believer in America first, Trump said in a statement November 12, 2024. Hegseth, a veteran of Army National Guard, was previously flagged as a possible insider threat in order to stand down from Joe Biden's inauguration back in 2021. The Associated Press reported that 12 U.S. National Guard members were removed from helping to secure Mr. Biden's 2021 inauguration. After vetting by the U.S. military and FBI, they were found to have made extremist statements in posts or text messages or had ties with right-wing malicious groups. In an interview with podcaster Sean Ryan, Hegseth said he was one of the National Guard members removed from securing the inauguration. I was deemed an extremist because of a tattoo by my National Guard unit in Washington, D.C., and my orders were revoked to guard the Biden inauguration. And it's a Jerusalem cross tattoo, which is just a Christian symbol, he told Ryan. But that's not the tattoo that his fellow guardsman, Rico Gaither, pointed out to his superiors. He told CBS News, when I looked at the pictures, in one he had a tattoo of the Jerusalem cross, which I didn't think was a problem. The next photo he had on his inner bicep, he had a bicep that said, "Do Vault." Gather said, I looked it up, and that tattoo had ties to extremist groups, so I sent it to my leadership. I included the photo attachment on the Army policy about tattoos, and I said, I just wanted you to know what's going on. I received a response saying Pete had been removed from the mission. Well, Biden's final weeks in office were Rife with controversial facts, he unleashed a wave of highly controversial pardons. He shielded criminals, including his own son, granting preemptive clemency to political allies, including members of the January 6th committee. Interesting. And in a final act of self-interest, mere minutes before leaving the office, he granted pardons to his own family. Now, these disgraceful moves turned presidential clemency into a partisan weapon, prioritizing political survival over justice. Over his 4-year term, Biden issued more acts of clemency than Franklin Delano Roosevelt did over 12 years. We will find out soon that Biden's IRS targeted more Trump nominees. Could be. I hope I am having a good day so far. Yes, I am. You're in northern Alberta, and we're in a freezer with negative 37 degrees Celsius. Brr. I don't like the cold. I feel for you. Stay warm. Stay warm. Yeah, that's chilly. That's really chilly. How do you survive that cold? You just stay out of it. You just don't go in it. Oh my gosh. It is 7:34. I think it's time to warm up my coffee. I'm going to give you guys just a little bit of some dance music. How's that sound? Get those legs moving. You're going to need to get those legs moving. Here we go. Just a little break. And I'm going to grab some coffee. I'll be right back in a mere moment.
Step aside, y'all, it's my time to shine. I'm feeling the groove with these hips of mine. Hands in the air like spaghetti gone rogue. My knees are jelly and my hips just broke. Shaking it, breaking it, what a blast. Wobble it, wiggle it, shake that ass. Do a jig or a jog, wiggle it to the side, or break that hip bone by moving your ass. Step up or stand aside. My shoulders pop like a rusty hinge. My fingers point like they're on a binge. Twirl like a tornado, then drop real low. It's not planned, it's a shit sideshow. I've got the rhythm of a clock that's broke. My dance floor moves are a big effing joke. Shaking it, breaking it, what a blast. Wobble it, wiggle it, shake that ass. Do a jig or a jog, wiggle it to the side, or break that hip bone by moving your ass. Step up or stand aside. Rig like lava lamp, mesmerizing glow. You can't help but watch me steal the show. I summon the shake, the shimmy, the twist, a mix of genius and a big old fist. You're drawn in close, your feet start to twitch, feeling the groove like a broke-ass bitch. Yeah! Shaking it, breaking it, what a blast. Wobble it, wiggle it, shake that ass. Do a jig or a jog, wiggle it to the side, or break that hip bone by moving your ass. Step up or stand aside. Now we're all in the shake, no need to be shy. Move like spaghetti and reach for the sky. We'll dance like we're cursed, laugh to a sore. Shizzy whiz nut reigns forevermore. So join the dance, let your weirdness unfurl. We're shaking ass, not a care in the world.
Now we move on to the The Vietnamese Communist propaganda revelations. Ooh, oh boy, this is going to get crazy right here. Seemingly every square kilometer of Vietnam, where I've resided for a few months now, is covered with street side inspirational feel good propaganda posters erected by a Communist Party of Vietnam. They inspire, they motivate, they hearten. The proletariat struggle continues. Mm. And a tangent on ideology. I'm often told that the Antifa, Pride, BLM culture war stuff in the West is communist agitation. But the question is, if that's it, why does none of this stuff exist in Vietnam? There's no drag queen story hour in Vietnam, a mentally ill man in a full-on woman face reading children's literature in public school being unheard of, nor is there critical race theory. Given the disparity, one of these, the allegedly commie West or Vietnam, is apparently not communisting right. What gives? I've thought a lot about it, and my conclusion, for what it's worth, is that neither is real true communism. In the United States, although much of the deep state's agenda is clearly borrowed from the social engineering tactics of the communists of yore, what the technocrats aspire to is something more like a techno-feudalism than classic communism. And at the top of the pyramid, the black rocks of the world are all the fascists in the narrow sense of merging corporate and state power, minus the nationalism. The communist cosplay is for the weaponized lower tier BLM Antifa transgender morons on the ground who act as enforcers. In Vietnam, while the trappings of communism are maintained, the iconic yellow star in the red flag is draped all over the place. The reality is that even if they study the works of Karl Marx and Lenin, a 19th century European ideology was never going to fit cleanly into an Oriental culture that has been so vastly different in its developmental trajectory over thousands of years. Ho Chi Minh, the vaunted revolutionary, furthermore, seemingly only embraced communism out of convenience, as he found the ideology useful in his quest to drive the occupiers out of his country. The communism, in other words, was merely a vehicle for his nationalism. As contradictory and messy as that proposition is, at any rate, he certainly wasn't the internationalist tro- Trotsky brand of communist. He literally fought a war against the Chinese Red Army in 1979, the last war fought by Vietnam, which has maintained a frosty diplomatic relationship with China ever since. One crucial piece of evidence of Ho Chi Minh's ideological flexibility, among others, is a letter that he wrote to U.S. President Harry Truman in 1946, just after the conclusion of World War II, praising the United States for its dedication to peace and security all over the world, and effectively begging it to intervene and help him evict the French colonists. And this is his letter. Dear Mr. President, on the occasion of the First Assembly of the United Nations in London, I beg to congratulate you for the continuous and successful efforts of your government has been making to maintain peace and security all over the world. As peace is indivisible as the Far East is being taken into a special consideration by your High Representative in China, General Marshall, I think it is our duty to inform you of what's going on in our country and what grave consequences for world security the aggressive war inflicted upon us by the French may bring about. As early as 1941, Vietnam has risen up against the Japanese fascists, taken arms by the side of the Allies. After the Japanese surrendered to the Allies, a provisional government was set up to restore order and eradicate all fascist intentions in Vietnam, supported by the whole nation. It carried out a democratic program, succeeded in restoring order and discipline everywhere under very difficult circumstances. General elections for National Congress were organized and took place on January 6, 1946, throughout the land, including 9 million electors, of whom are more than 90% went to the polls. Now, the French colonists, on the contrary, surrendered to the Japanese as early as September 1941. For 4 years, they wholeheartedly cooperated with the Japanese to fight against the Allies and repress the Vietnamese population. On March 9th, 1945, 5 months before the Japanese were defeated, the French, by a second surrender, lost all right and control over Indochina. On September 23rd, 1945, while the new Vietnam Democratic Republic was making strenuous efforts to carry out her reconstruction program, the French launched a night attack on the innocent population of Saigon, which was followed by a systematically destructive and new murderous warfare. Facts of looting, assassination of civilians, violence, indiscriminate bombing of non-strategical places by warplanes are reported every day. Their intention is to invade the whole country to reestablish their domination. In the meanwhile, after the offer of interference voiced by Mr. Vincent Carter, chairman of the Far East Department, our people enthusiastically welcomed President Truman's address on October 28, 1945, in which he vigorously and concretely set forth the principles of self-determination, equality of status laid down in the Atlantic and San Francisco charters. Now, since that time, the French have tremendously increased their fighting forces. Millions of people will suffer, thousands will be killed, and invaluable properties will be destroyed unless the United States would step out to stop that bloodshed and unlawful aggression. For this reason, on behalf of my people and government, I respectfully request you interfere for an immediate solution of the Vietnam issue. The people of Vietnam earnestly hopes that the great American Republic would help us conquer full independence and support us in our reconstruction work. Thus, with the assistance of China and the United States, both in capital and technique, our Vietnam Republic will be able to bring her share in the building up of world peace and world prosperity with respect. I am, dear President, yours truly, Ho Chi Minh. But back to the communist posters. One can tell a lot about the priorities of the ruling class by the propaganda it disseminates. What is impossible not to notice about the Vietnamese propaganda, these posters without fail depict nuclear families with smiling, normal, gendered children, no tattoos, nothing against them. I have a lot, no hair dyes, no piercings. Meanwhile, at least up until the dawn of the Golden Age, the American government was flying the pride flags off of embassies the world over as clear agitation propaganda, embarrassing American in whose names these displays are erected and confusing natives in equal measure. Strange times indeed. Sorry, that was a weird one to get through. 4.7 trillion yesterday. We are not surprised. Good morning. Oh yeah, it's amazing. Well, legal consequences for AOC. Yes, please. No one can accuse Trump's administration of not taking the illegal immigration issue seriously enough. In addition to the ICE raids and the actions against sanctuary cities and states, Tom Homan, Trump's border czar, raised serious questions about whether Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez might have engaged in illegal activities by hosting a webinar for illegal immigrants to give them advice on how to avoid deportation. During a candid conversation with Fox News, Homan didn't mince words about his concerns, suggesting that her actions could be crossing a legal line. Homan confirmed he is not sitting idly by in this matter. Instead, he is actively collaborating with the Department of Justice to ascertain if Ocasio-Cortez's actions violated any laws. I sent an email today to Deputy Attorney General. Homan told Fox News Channel's Laura Ingraham last week. Then why don't we just watch that?
Tom, you got AOC out there, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Congresswoman, putting out a webinar, doing a webinar to help illegals avoid, I guess, apprehension, giving tips about how to continue to remain in the country and ultimately game the system.
And I sent an email today to the Deputy Attorney General. At what level is that impediment? Is that impediment? I'm not an attorney. I'm not a prosecutor. Is that impediment? Is that impeding our law enforcement efforts? If so, what are we going to do about it? Is she crossing the line? So I'm working with the Department of Justice and finding out where is that line that they cross. So maybe AOC is going to be in trouble now, but I need the AOG to opine on that. But because there's impediment is impediment, in my opinion. I'm not a prosecutor, but we need some further guidance on that. But again, if we have to take every federal dollar out of the city, we'll do it. I mean, we're done. This is about public safety. This is about community safety. Knowingly releasing the public safety back in the public is just stupid. You're putting the public at great risk. You're putting our officers at great risk. You're even putting the illegal alien at great risk because anything can happen on arrest on the street. So we just want to make common sense. In sanctuary cities, they want to step aside. We're coming. We're going to do it for you. If you don't want to make your community safer, President Trump's going to.
And it's obvious that Homan isn't being completely serious here. He confirmed as much on CNN Sunday morning by saying, Are you suggesting that she should be prosecuted? CNN Dana Bash asked Homan, I'm suggesting that I would ask the Department of Justice where that line on impediment, right? Yeah, here's what he has to
Make me
say.
aware of immigration law. I've done this since 1984. I forgot more about the immigration law than AOC will ever know. Matter of fact, the hearing a couple of years ago, I had explained to her that entering the country illegally was actually a crime. So, I don't know. I'm not going to play that game with her. I simply made a statement. When you sit down with people who are wanted by us, criminal aliens that have been ordered to be deported from the United States government, and ignore that order, if you and I ignored that order, we'd be sitting in prison. But they ignored an order from a federal judge. They're hiding in a home, and she's telling them not to open the door.
Yeah. While it's uncertain whether Ocasio-Cortez will face any legal repercussions, I probably bet she won't. The fact that Trump administration is taking this issue seriously should give opponents of Trump's efforts to curb illegal immigration pause. And as we wait for the Department of Justice's response to Holman's inquiries, one thing is clear: the Trump administration, one, go after just the illegal alien, but accessories to their crimes as well. Bring it on. People like this. The bullies, liars, and tyranny of wimps. Yeah. Yeah, this one here is pretty hilarious. It might be over, but give them their due. The wimps had a hell of a run. Future historians will claim their age began with the 1984 avant-garde film Revenge of the Nerds, which was snubbed by the Oscars. Soon they were riding high with Bill Gates, the world's wealthiest man, whose ominous warnings foretold the horrors that awaited. Be nice to nerds. Chances are you'll end up working for one. By the time the 1990s came to close, Gates's chilling prophecy came to pass. The nerds really were in charge. The geeks, the dorks, the wimps had taken over. Editorial note. Okay, technically speaking, geeks, nerds, dorks, and wimps are all slightly different categories, i.e., not all wimps are geeks, not all geeks are wimps. You got me there, Mr. Smarty Pants. But look, I'm painting with broad strokes here. Besides, it's an ethos we're trying to capture. The outsider who's too snivelly and annoying to fit within society's norms, the weaselly lug with superiority complexes, kind of like Justice Stewart's critique of obscenity. We know it when we see it. There was nothing inherently wrong with this sin of the wimps and nerds. Hey, it worked out pretty well for Microsoft. Many of the wimps were talented, capable leaders. The problem was what came next, the tyranny of wimps. In the early 2000s, it was mostly subterranean, swirling slightly beneath the surface, only occasionally bubbling up and bearing its gruesome face. But the moment Obama was sworn in, it became institutionalized. Masculinity wasn't just a bad word; it was now toxic. Machismo was blasphemy. Traditional male behavior like hanging out, telling jokes, busting each other's chops were classified as dastardly tools of the patriarchy. It set the stage for the gender debate that cost the Democrats dearly in the 2024 election. But back then, Donald Trump and the MAGA weren't even on the radar. It was a different time and a different age. We were just a few days away from President Obama winning his second term. In fact, when a story broke that was apropos of its era: workplace bullying in the NFL. An offensive lineman named Jonathan Martin, a second-round draft pick of the Miami Dolphins, quit his team and left the sport, claiming he was being bullied by his teammates, fellow offensive lineman Richie Incognito. The story soon coalesced into a massive media maelstrom. While the racial elements taking root, Jonathan Martin, the bully player, was half black, Incognito was white. The headlines and allegations were exactly what you would expect. Incognito denied being a bully and a racist. Still, the Dolphins suspended him immediately. He didn't play another down that season, nor did he play a single snap the following season. It wasn't until 2015 that Incognito rejoined the NFL, this time as a member of the Buffalo Bills, and was promptly voted to the Pro Bowl. Toxic masculinity, workplace bullying, white supremacy. That's the Bullygate story that the media presented to the American people, and during the Obama years, most people went along with the flow. Trouble is, the bullying story was bogus. I never believed for a second I was being bullied, Martin now tells ESPN. It's a story I've been trying to fix for 10 years. Too little, too late for Incognito. Adam Schefter. With ESPN in a series of interviews starting in late 2023, he was determined to emphasize what he was doing now and communicate his plans for the future and how he should be judged. His job now might be harder than protecting a quarterback from a 300-pound pass rushers. He edits himself in real time, texting updates and changes to previous comments. He sways from being assertive to being cautious. He describes himself as an alpha who wants to assure you that he wasn't a fully formed person in his 20s. He worries over retaining agency of his story. I never believe for a second I was being bullied, Martin says now. Weirdly, Martin seems to blame his mom. When Martin left the Dolphins faculty on October 28, 2013, reporters started asking questions. At some point after his departure, Martin said during the 2024 call, his mother told a reporter that he was being bullied in Miami, that she said the word bullying. I had a situation with my teammates that wasn't super happy about, he said, but my mother had her own read on the situation. The word took a life of its own. The situation went viral. I hadn't even told my coaches. I hadn't told anyone, Martin said, and suddenly it's on ESPN, right? My mother, maybe in her mind, I can't read her mind. She thought she was doing the right thing, Jonathan Martin said. Doesn't it sort of sound like Martin was being bullied by his mom? But maybe she was too smart to do so. If Martin simply quit football, he'd owe the Dolphins a portion of his signing bonus. But if he's the victim of workplace bullying, well, it's a second-round draft pick. He'll be holding on to plenty of moolah. This seems to be Incognito's theory. And Richie Incognito says he couldn't cut it in the NFL, so he quit, and his mom blamed me. Legacy media pushed this narrative long and far. Too bad it was all a lie. They lied to protect his money. He quit. The team had every right to claw back that money. His mom started the bullying narrative with ESPN. The Tyranny of Wimps was a reign of terror that lasted from July 20th, 1984, release date of The Revenge of the Nerds, to November 5th, 2024, election day of you-know-whom. 40 years of heartache, agony, and way too much estrogen. Oh, the horrors. The popularization of therapy speak, with doofuses blathering about validating feelings and telling your truth instead of telling the actual truth. The knee-jerk loathing of all things masculine, the way wimps wielded power by criminalizing pronouns, redefining genders, and institutionalizing male phobia, the creepy, vindictive way they manipulated language to fuel their sick, twisted revenge fantasies. It was awful. So glad it's finally over. What a bunch of damn bullies. I'm ready to move. I'm tired of the cold. Oh, I understand. I'm with you there. I don't like the cold at all either. And it's not much warmer here. It's not really much warmer here in the South, I will say. Ah, I'm not sure if I should cover this one. Mm, 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 mm. Okay, it's short. It's short. Yeah, this is something that should be talked about here. And I will put, let me put up a disclaimer before I do this next one, because this one might get me in all kinds of trouble here. Add a new one, and here is I am in it, just reading a story. All right. So we go add that one to it, and we're going to put this banner up there. We're going to show this banner. What the hell? Why is it not working? Show on top. No. Why is that not working? I don't know what just happened. Let's delete that. Ah, I see what the problem is. Add a new one. That's why. I am an idiot and just reading the story. There we go. And then we're going to add that. And there we go. We'll show that one. And we'll put it down at the bottom right here. I am idiot and just reading the story. Okay. Don't get all upset here. 500 Days We Must Never Forget. This is by Rabbi Michael Barclay. We must never forget 500 days, exactly 500 days ago, the world saw some of the most evil and heinous crimes ever perpetrated by humanity. Hamas attacked Israel from Gaza. They didn't attack military bases or soldiers. Instead, they demonstrated themselves to be the personification of evil. They consciously attacked civilians, specifically the weak, old, female. Hamas performed acts that are consistent with the acts of demons. They videotaped their own disgusting actions with the pride of insane beasts. They raped and tortured children and young women. They beheaded civilians, murdered parents in front of their children. Hamas parachuted into a music festival filled with young people dancing and celebrating life, and they delivered death. They killed and tortured and, did they grape? Like rabid animals. They repeatedly raped young women until they were dead and even filmed themselves doing that to the corpses. They did this with sadistic glee. In one case, they did this to a woman on the corpse of her dead boyfriend and videotaped it on her phone, followed by filming them shooting and murdering her. And then in an act of ultimate cruelty, they texted that video out to her parents. We must never forget. On that day, 500 days ago, Hamas murdered over 1,200 innocent civilians, including more than 40 American citizens. They kidnapped another 251 Israelis and took them back to their buildings and tunnels in Gaza to torture them. Kept in darkness, tortured, raped, killed. These hostages have been kept as leverage to prevent Israel from fully and appropriately retaliating against their evil of October 7th. Hamas committed an evil on a grand scale that the world has not seen since the very worst times of the Nazi regime of World War II. We must never forget, we must not allow the world to forget. On October 8th, 2023, the world was in shock at this demonstration of pure evil by Hamas, and on that day, even the most compassionate human beings on the planet were calling for the absolute destruction of Hamas in Gaza. The outrage was enormous. The pundits and media commenters loudly called for the destruction of Hamas, but by December, most of the world had forgotten the level of evil that had been perpetrated. It is psychologically understandable why people would forget their outrage. The human soul is not equipped to be able to integrate the shock that anybody could do what Hamas had done. It's easier for our minds to pretend that it really wasn't that bad than it is for us to deal with the horrors that Hamas committed against mankind. It is simpler for our minds to try to rationalize the demonic behavior of Hamas as being some way to justify than it is to admit that they are the personification of evil in our time. It's easier to make excuses than to recognize that pure evil really does exist in our time. And they are evil. Hamas is the modern incarnation of Amalek, who attacked the ancient Hebrews 35,000 years from behind. 3,500, sorry, behind killing civilians, the weak, children, and the old. They are like Amalek, who the Bible tells us we should not defeat but destroy completely. Like Amalek, the crimes against all of humanity by Hamas are so massive that there's no possibility of redemption for them. Like a cancer, they need to be completely annihilated for the organism of humanity to be able to survive. We must never forget, and we cannot allow the world to forget. For 500 days, Hamas has been waging a brilliant public relations campaign while attacking militarily. They have launched over 19,000 rockets into Israel in the last 500 days. They have convinced much of the world of their propaganda myths, the fallacious myth of historical Palestine, the propaganda of Hamas taking care of Gazan civilians, when in fact Hamas has tortured and killed any Gazans who disagreed with their methods and hate. The despicable behavior of using humans as shields, and yet they try to portray themselves as victims. Hamas has encouraged worldwide riots on the streets and college campuses of Western civilization, all under the guise that they are victims, when in fact they are the greatest perpetrators of evil in our generation. They are succeeding in proselytizing their evil as being righteous, and most sadly, all too many people in the West have bought into their lies. For it's easier for our psyches to believe that That then it is to confront the reality that contrary to idealistic worldviews that we all seek, pure evil does in fact exist and is manifest in Hamas. And we must never forget, we cannot allow the world to ever forget the evil of Hamas. For 500 days, hostages have been kept in captivity like caged animals. Hamas has perpetrated atrocities in Israel and even upon their own people in Gaza that defy any concept of a human soul. But this is actually not new for Hamas, which since its creation in 1988 has been committed to the death and destruction over life and peace. Their very charter commits to them to destroy not only Israel, but all people who do not believe in the fanatical extremism of Islamic fundamentalism. And since 2005, when Hamas took control of Gaza after Israel voluntarily left the area without any stipulations, Hamas has perpetrated evil. They've lost weapons at Israel. They've launched weapons at Israel, tortured their own citizens, all while their leaders have lived in extreme wealth in countries like Qatar. While the people of Gaza have suffered, Hamas has indoctrinated young children into their hate and grown a generation of young people who would rather destroy their own souls through acts like raping and kidnapping than they would rather die than have peace and prosperity. On October 7th, 2023, Hamas created evil at a level unique in its horror of the 21st century for 500 days. Hamas has perpetrated that evil worldwide in every moment. They've tortured and killed for 500 days. They've lied, destroyed, attacked Western civilization at every opportunity. And Hamas has shown the world that evil still exists, and they have challenged all good and righteous people to stand by our ethics and destroy that evil utterly and completely. Like Amalek, it is our obligation to blot their memory out of existence. But we must remember that in doing so, by not just defeating but destroying Hamas, we are making the world a safer place. As President Trump has said, Gaza could become the Riviera of the Middle East if it were not for Hamas and their Iranian supporters. Peace and prosperity could fill Gaza, and all the nations of the Middle East, including Israel, could create a paradise if and when Hamas is destroyed. 500 days and nights of emotional roller coaster, the likes of which our generation has never experienced. 500 days we must remember always. It is for this reason that assemblage of daily missives that were written during the time has been created, detailing day by day the horrors and triumphs, the pains and prayers, a testament so that we never forget and truly commit ourselves to never again. We must never forget. We can never allow the world to forget. We must remember at times the evil that is Hamas is our obligation to destroy that evil. In doing so, may we usher in a time of peace and prosperity between Israel and their neighbors, between people of all faiths, and for the entire world. And that was written by Michael Rabbi Barclay. He's a spiritual leader of a temple near Shimka. I'm going to say this wrong. The author of writings, biblical wisdom, and you can read more of his stuff there. It's a pretty rough one, and I hope that people do remember and not forget that. But also make sure you hit that like and subscribe if you haven't already. And here's just a quick reminder of what this country is about.
Democracy is a form of government based upon the principle of majority rule, period. End of discussion. Now, that's not very complicated. Majority rule. It's easy to understand, easy to sell to the masses, and I might add, deadly. For example, what would you call a lynch mob? That's majority rule. There's only one dissenting vote, and he's at the end of the rope. Now, that's pure democracy in action. But wait a minute, you say. The majority should rule, yes, but not to the extent of destroying the rights of the minority. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we are no longer describing a democracy. We are speaking of a republic. A republic is a limited democracy. It's a form of government based upon the principle of limited majority rule. Limited so that the minority, even a minority of one, can be protected against the whims and passions of the majority. And how do you protect the minority from the majority? You write down a set of rules on a piece of paper. You say, this we can do, that we cannot. At the top of the paper, you write the word Constitution. And then everyone agrees to follow the rules no matter what the temptation. And when you're finished, You've created a constitutional republic.
Boom. Just like that. Burr, Stormy. Welcome, East Texas Cowboy. Good to see you. $1.99 from Zach Shiz. Thanks for the hours of content. Yes, I do give a little bit of the content here every so often. I hope that you guys appreciate it. I know that I appreciate it, and I'm just an idiot reading the damn story. Remember that always. Thank you so much, Zach. That's for you, brother. I hope you're doing well this wonderful morning and keeping safe. I really do. It is a beautiful, going to be a beautiful day for me. Oh yeah, it's going to be a really beautiful day for me. Let's see if I can hide that. There we go. I appreciate you, Zach. Thank you so, so very much. That is wonderful of you. So glad you got all the blowing done yesterday. That seems a little kinky there, Stormy. I'm just saying. Just saying. Your deer are showing up looking for feed. Oh my gosh, yeah, that's gonna happen. So what do we have here? News versus reality. And this comes from Lincoln Brown. And he wrote this September 17th, 2025. Says many years ago, now this is Lincoln Brown, so I'm just reading his story here. I was appointed to be the news director of a small town radio station where I worked as a board operator. I didn't get the job because of merit and didn't even want it. It was a battlefield promotion. The previous news director had quit after a disagreement, and the GM just happened to be walking by the booth where I was minding my own business, segueing commercials for the Dr. Laura show. He looked and said, "Hey, you can be the new news director." And so, despite my protests, I was. Most small market news products at the time consisted of reading the community calendar notes, a few PSAs, and some lost dog announcements. I'm going to say that wrong, but somewhat ironically, I decided I would raise the bar. I took to the streets, reporter's notebook in hand, and met with the mayors, city council members, and managers, county commissioners, department head, cops, school superintendents, and anyone else who might be a news source. I did more than go to public meetings. I visited officials in offices, kept an eye on state and local issues that could impact the community, did plenty of deep dives, and even made one foray into investigative journalism. No, I did not have a news chopper, $1 million budget, or a $60 haircut, but pound for pound, I could have stacked my product up against any of Salt Lake TV or radio stations. It was a more than a full-time job, but I felt like we were making a difference. When I quit, I was replaced by a very sweet, nice, well-meaning soccer mom. It didn't take long before the news went back to community calendar notes, a few PSAs, and some lost dog announcements, and oh well. A few years ago, I got a text from her asking for a phone call. We moved away in 2014, so it was a bit of a surprise. What she wanted was advice how to improve the news product. I asked her how she was getting her news stories. She made a few phone calls, sent some emails, and wrote PSAs. I told her she would need to hit the pavement, meet the players, and build a reputation. That was not feasible, she said, because people didn't want to talk. They just put everything on social media. Granted, social media was not a factor when I was a reporter, but I told her if she wanted to stand out, she had to do the legwork and requisite brand building. She had to develop trust with with her news contacts, and that wouldn't happen with an email that happened to feature call letters in the signature line. In 2023, I wrote a deep dive piece for PJ Media about a drag queen story hour slated for that town's library. There was noticeable furor over it, and many citizens were outraged. The leadership of Into County, sufficiently unnerved by the potential backlash, decided to let the event take place. And out of curiosity, I checked the station's website to see how it covered the event. As I recall, there was not much to the piece. It didn't condone or condemn the event, but mentioned that it happened in such a way as not to anger anyone or, more to the point, catch any flack from the event's hosts, which to a degree is understandable, but it was a hot button issue for the community, and there was a bigger story to be told. The station opted to punt instead of digging deeper. There is, after all, safety in not ruffling any feathers. When I was still a news director, I got my share of threats and demands for retractions. Our country commission once passed a controversial measure. As I was writing the story, my GM stuck his head in my office and asked if the story would make the commissioners look bad. I explained that it was not our job to make local politicians look good. It was our job to report what they did. The news should be neutral, but there's a difference between neutral and neuter. Journalists should report the truth, even if the truth does not favor the side they prefer, especially then. Of course, there's more massaging the news than not ticking off half your audience and keeping the ad dollars coming. The larger your sphere of influence, the more powerful the people to whom you must answer. Coupled with that is the danger of members of the media believing that they are obligated not to report the truth, but to create the truth. We watch that kind of hubris on full display with the Hunter laptop story. Moreover, Trump's fine people remark. They want to remake the news in their own images, and that may come from misplaced fealty to government or party. That can also be the product of sheer ego. So Margaret Brennan's Sunday performance should come as no surprise. Writing over it Unheard, Wolfgang Muncha notes that the EU was not ready for J.D. Vance, who was unwilling to play by House rules. And here are some of the excerpts. Having been regulated to the kids' table of international diplomacy, the Europeans hoped for some soothing words from the Americans as the Munich Security Conference. Instead, they got a scolding from J.D. Vance, the U.S. Vice President. He told them that the biggest threat to the West is not Russia or China, but the suppression of free speech in Europe. You might think that this is an odd issue to raise at a conference about security, but for Vance, two issues are linked. Vice President cited a number of outrageous cases of state censorship, the most extreme of which was a cancellation of Romania's presidential election last year after the wrong candidate won. The decision was widely applauded in the EU, which I also see as an alarming sign of how censorship has been normalized in modern Europe. The argument for cancellation was Russian interference. Someone apparently had lied on TikTok. Brennan and her cohorts, both of the U.S. and across the globe, have an obligation to serve the blob, Munchao mentions. It's a symbiotic relationship. They serve the blob, and in turn, the blob makes them the gatekeepers of information. There's a genuine belief that all things conservative are fascistic. Of course, these people are also genuinely believe that the deleting of a child in the womb or postpartum is a reproductive choice. They also believe that sexualizing children is love, and any objections to the contrary are genocidal. They will gladly harass, or in some countries, arrest anyone who objects to their views, but that harassment and those arrests are justified by the people responsible for them. They aren't Yahtzees, after all, just ask them. Consumerate with this set of problems is the fact that many in the public refuse to acknowledge that things have come to a festering head in the home countries and abroad. For some, the daily revelations are much to bear. Those revelations are harbingers that the world may not continue as it has for so many years, and that the chaos is much closer than some would like to think. Many still want to hope that all this shall one day pass and we'll be back to business as usual. However, business as usual is how we got here. I'd like to think our company will make millions of dollars, that in 5 years we'll be retired in the Caribbean where I'll drink red stripes or rum, smoke cigars, or fish off the piers every day, and I will never give the headlines the slightest glance. And that's the reality I want. I have to live in the reality I have. The opponents of Elon Musk do not have as many supporters as the blob would like us to think. But the supporters, they do and cannot and will not come to terms with the notion that their leaders have been selling them out for decades. These people pledge their love and undying loyalty to the progressive movement. They're not able to cope with the fact that their unfaithful lover hasn't been surfing porn, behind their backs, and it's been swiping right on Tinder and frequenting red light districts, and that's not the reality they want. The EU, CBS, the Democratic Party, and their fellow travelers are striving to maintain the reality they want, even if it's pure fiction. Leaders and journalists in particular should never indulge in that sin, and if they do, they deserve every guilt-ridden sleepless night that they have coming to them. The doctrine of misinformation for the greater good always ends horribly and is, incidentally, a favorite tool of totalitarians. Margaret Brennan should take note. As should we. No, I will not put on a jacket for you, Stormy. I don't know how you deal with it. It's very cold. It is very cold. People need to stay warm. Please, 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 for all that is good in the world, stay warm. I've got two more for you guys. Adventures in the Patriarchy, Volume 4, Your Brain on Third Wave Feminism. Nike's cringe throwback girl boss ad tone deaf to cultural shift. Apparently, Nike hasn't gotten the memo that American culture is done with all the DEI intersectional feminist nonsense, putting out an ad better suited for the Me Too era than the 2025 golden age. So we get this 2018 Me Too era throwback ad about shattering glass ceilings and lionesses roaring or whatever. Frankly, it's amazing Nike brass deemed Caitlin Clark diverse enough to qualify for an appearance. Rosie O'Donnell, to put it diplomatically, is not handling new Trump's presidency well, and I'm not going to show that. If your daughter attending public university ever veers off the patriarchal reservation for a little bit on account of her lib feminist professors, just pop this little video into her DMs and it'll scare her straight.
That is 100% Julie Andrews. She has the scar right there on the back. Oh my God, this is the best moment of the last freaking 14 days or whatever number we're on. Please, everyone, believe. You know what? Julie Andrews lives. TikTok, you don't stop.
Yeah. Turquoise Mountain, brought to you by USAID. Turquoise Mountain was founded in 2006 by His Majesty King Charles III to revive historic eras and traditional crafts to provide job skills and renewed sense of pride. Turquoise Mountain has built over 50 small businesses in Afghanistan, Myanmar, the Middle East, supporting a new generation of artisan entrepreneurs who will not only drive economic development, but also preserve the unique cultures and traditions. Why does an NGO founded by British royalty require U.S. taxpayer money to bankroll? Well, why don't we just see? I'm not watching that. The music will get you. The music will get you. Oh, yeah. This guy right here, I showed him yesterday where he's upset because his wife isn't receiving $1 million for of foreign government aid. Clay Travis to libs. Young men see Democrats as, wimps. During a symposium at University of Chicago Institute of Politics, after a rambling diatribe about the beta cuck seated to his right regarding why young men flipped so hard for Trump this past election cycle, Clay Travis cut to chase the palpable discomfort of the lib women sharing the stage with him. Yeah, here you go.
Young men have not become much more conservative, at least according to Gallup, but they have become more Republican. So you have this interesting...
Wait, say that again, the men?
They have not identified as more conservative, but they are becoming more Republican. So from the Obama era, young men and young women were Democrats, right? For both elections, strong majorities of young men and young women voted for Barack Obama. And then you had a slow decline, right? This didn't happen in just one election. There's been a deterioration of democratic identity among young men for over 10 years. And so
are you saying specifically they turn against Democrats?
I'm saying that they are more, yes, they are more Republican now, but not necessarily because they've shifted the right on issues like climate change or abortion or same-sex marriage. They're still well to the left of their dads and grandfathers when it comes to that stuff. And so you have this really interesting situation where this group, again, looks on paper fairly liberal in a lot of ways. And in point of fact, you had 6 in 10 young men who are moderates vote for Trump, and more than 1 in 5 liberal young men vote for Trump, right? And so if we're going to look for explanations, we need to move beyond issues. We need to understand, like, there's something about Trump that was attractive, and then there's something about the Democratic Party, at least in its current manifestation, that was repellent.
I was really struck by you saying, especially that, even if they are more likely to identify as Republicans, they're still far more liberal than the men of generations before them. And I think that that's something that would surprise a lot of young women like myself to hear that. I was surprised.
So what is it that we're missing about, or what is it that people who are not, as Magdalene said, people who don't understand why? That's my first question. I have a second one, but go ahead.
Okay, so what I would start with is men aspire to be bigger, stronger, and faster than we are, almost universally. That's why superheroes are popular. That's why pro athletes are popular. Who is the most masculine Democrat right now in America?
Ouch.
Mayor Pete.
Is that a gay joke?
No, Mayor Pete. No, well, no, it's just that he's not particularly masculine. Nobody's like, oh, Mayor Pete, he's a badass. Chuck Schumer. Is anybody like, hey, Chuck Schumer holding up an avocado and a beer to talk about the Super Bowl? Is anybody like that trying to grill? Is anybody like, hey, that's a dude I want to hang out with?
But Trump's like a grandpa.
Well, hold on.
Yeah.
Trump took a bullet in his ear and immediately stood up and said, fight, fight, fight. Every man in America and most of the women out here were impressed by that, even if the women won't admit it. She's shaking her head strong. And second part of this, basically summing it up, Democrats for men are pussies and Republicans
Democrats for men
are pussies. There are no masculine men in the Democrat Party right now.
Oh, yeah. That right there was absolutely glorious. Absolutely glorious. Your butt is getting warm. Oh, yes. That right there was absolutely glorious. I have to say, you don't get that often. Because everyone wants to call it toxic masculinity. Yeah. It's not. This morning briefing, Trump is so powerful that even now he's in charge of every plane in the sky. Top of the briefing. Happy Tuesday, Cruiser Morning Briefing, friends. The fortunate man who delights in all things corn on the cob knows little of irregular regret. It's supposed to be poor form to kick people when they're down, when said people who are down never shut up. I don't know, maybe further kicking is warranted. The recently deposed Democrats and their media lapdogs are not doing anything to warrant merciful treatment. They're more awful than ever, and that's quite a feat. Whenever something bad happens in the world, leftists seem most eager to prove that they're horrible human beings. It's not just the usual suspects trolling on social media. Dems in Congress and their mainstream media lapdogs quickly start flying their Trump derangement syndrome, I'm a scumbag, freak flags. I was perusing X yesterday afternoon when news of the Delta plane flipping over in Toronto hit. Yeah, that's pretty amazing. And we'll talk about that here in a bit. It didn't take much imagination to figure out how the lefties would react. I shared my thoughts on the subject, and is so often the case, was quickly proven right. I decided to go about things a little differently and add this here early. Fat, stupid, and predictable is no way to go through life, Democrats. Shot. Chaser. How awful is the legacy media? NBC is trying to blame President Trump and Doge right now for a plane crash that happened in Canada. Yeah.
I did want to, underscore, to pick up on the conversation you were just having, though, in terms of the recent string of aviation incidents, Tom. This is going to, yet again, raise the concern about FAA staffing, air traffic control staffing. Now, this is a Canadian air traffic control tower, and this is under Canadian authority once it crosses the border. And yet, as you know, there has been this talk about maybe staff cuts at the FAA as a part of President Trump's effort to trim down the federal workforce.
No, he removed diversity, equity, inclusion. You said instead of hiring people because of their differences, hire those that have the best qualifications for the job. If you hire cream of the crop, you hire the best to fit that job, not because of what's between their legs or lack thereof. If you hire the best of the best, you're going to get the best of the best. Gender, sex has nothing to do with it. Race has nothing to do with it. Your political beliefs have nothing to do with who does the best job. And this is what the news tends to forget. This is what all these lapdogs are on and on about is, oh, it's Trump's fault because this plane flipped over. What it has to do with is you hire people that can do the best job. Now, accidents like these happen, and kudos for the pilots that managed to have only 8 people injured in this plane. No deaths. 8 people injured. They managed to get the plane on its backside, and everyone survived. Celestial, I think it's a game oligarchs are playing. Let's F up humanity.
And yet, as you also know, the FAA has been complaining for years that they are understaffed in critical job positions, especially air traffic control. I was having a conversation with somebody today about whether air traffic control in America is being affected by the staff cuts. So far, not to their knowledge, and yet other positions related to maintaining critical equipment appear to have been cut. So this is going to feed into all of these recent incidents, and the safety of the total air traffic system is going to be very much a part of the conversation as we go forward, at least on this side of the country, of the border, I should say.
Yeah. Once more with feeling, NBC News is the most corrupt and biased of all the corrupt and biased American news organizations. It's part of a media behemoth that's writing paychecks to Rachel Maddow and Joy Reid. We could write this off as just another advanced case of Trump derangement syndrome, but it's more than that. Democrats have been playing this game for a while. All things negative and or tragic are the fault of a Republican president. Even when there's a Democrat in the White House, Barack Obama blamed every ill in his administration on George W. Bush. Until that moment, he walked out the door on January 2017. The NBC idiot tried to shoehorn in something about Trump because he and his ilk have marching orders to be the resistance for the next 4 years. Now they're just making stuff up and they know it. It's pathetic, infuriating. The reason that so many Americans consider the MSN types to be the enemy of the people. Notoriously Shycom spy fetish Eric Swalwell used one of his precious few brain cells to weigh in on the subject. Swalwell is facing backlash after he falsely pointed fingers at Trump for recent plane crashes, saying that Trump is president and is in charge of air safety, which means all of the crashes are his fault. No president has more plane crashes in the first month in office than Donald Trump. Swalwell, who had an affair with a Chinese spy, Fang Fang, claimed. Like you, I'm still mystified by the fact that Congressman Ni Hao hasn't imprisoned. His ex-posts, they were called tweets back in ancient time, youngins, make me think of something else. Yeah, the whole Trump is out of control, everything happens in the skies lunacy is reminiscent of the days of the Bush-Cheney weather machine causing hurricanes. No president has more planes crash in the first month in office than Donald Trump, from Swalwell. We should be very grateful that batshit crazy isn't contagious. If it were, we'd have another pandemic on our hands again. It's impressive how well President Trump and the people of his administration aren't letting themselves be distracted by the ravings of the vanquished, mentally unwell Democrats. One of them will occasionally put a lefty back in his or her place, but it never turns into anything protracted. The focus is on undoing the damage that the Democrats did when they were the inmates with the keys to the asylum. Let the dams keep shrieking from their self-imposed emotional gulag. It's a great ongoing reminder to the American electorate that it made the right choice. And now, for something that isn't so awful. Yes. A dog watching sheep being herded. Emma Washington, thank you so much. $2 for Emma Washington. It's midnight here. You've got to sleep. You get some rest, Emma. Thank you very much. You have been a great supporter of this channel and all things crazy. Thank you so much for your support. And there's nothing I can say that is better about anything today, because it's going to be a beautiful day. It's going to be a wonderful day. You get some rest, Emma, and we will see you on the flip side of things. Hello, Miss Deborah Bellinger. How you doing? Good to see you, girl. It is going to be a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day. And of course, let's bring this up. This will be the last before I head out of here. There's been another commercial airline crash, this time in Toronto, Canada. According to local reports, the video posted on social media, Delta Flight 4819, arriving from Minneapolis, crashed, flipping over on the runway at Toronto Pearson International Airport. There were 80 people on board, 76 passengers and 4 crew. It appears that both wings came off the plane upon impact. Paramedics on the scene told CTV News that up to 8 people were injured. It is not known whether any of the injuries are serious. The airport posted on X that it is aware of the incident, that all passengers have been accounted for. The videos are astounding. It's a miracle, perhaps a testament to the skills of in-flight staff, that anyone walked away from this crash.
We're in Toronto. We just landed. Our plane crashed. It's upside down. Fire department's on site. Upside down. Everybody, most people appear to be okay. We're all getting off. Some smoke going on.
Yeah. It's amazing. It's amazing that these people survived. The crash comes in the wake of a deadly collision between American Airlines plane and Black Hawk helicopter near Ronald Reagan Washington Airport on January 29th. There were 67 fatalities and no survivors in that crash, some of which have attributed to a shortage of air traffic controllers. Shockingly, 85 people have been killed in commercial plane crashes since the first of the year, in addition to the DCA crash. On January 31st, a Learjet medical transport crashed in Philadelphia, killing 7 people. On February 6th, 10 people were killed, and a Bering Air flight heading to Nome, Alaska went missing. Wreckage was later found in the Bering Sea off the coast of Nome. 1 person was killed and 4 injured when 2 planes crashed on the runway at Scottsdale Airport in Arizona. In addition, on Saturday, 2 people were killed in Georgia in a small plane crash near the Covington Municipal Airport. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has vowed to investigate the airline industry, particularly the air traffic control system. Over the weekend, he wrote on X that President Trump has ordered him to deliver a new world-class air traffic control system. He announced tomorrow members of Elon's SpaceX team will be visiting Air Traffic Control System Command Center in Virginia to get a first-hand look at the current system, learn what air traffic controllers like and dislike about their current tools, and envision how we can make a new, better, modern, and safer system. The airline responded to this crash. Fox News reports that 3 people have been transported to the hospital in critical condition: a baby, 80-year-old man, and a 40-year-old woman. That's so sorry. Sorry to hear. The airline responded to news of the crash. Delta is aware of reports of Endeavor Flight 4819 operating from Minneapolis, St. Paul to Toronto Pearson International Airport was involved in an incident. They said in a statement, "We're working to confirm any details. We'll share the most current information on news.delta.com as soon as it becomes available." We also have a statement from the FAA. Delta Airlines Flight 4819 was operated by Endeavor Air, crashed while landing at Toronto Pearson International Airport, Canada, around 2:45 p.m. local time on Monday, February 17th. The statement continued. All 80 people on board were evacuated. The CRJ 900 departed Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. The Transportation Safety Board of Canada will be in charge of the investigation, will provide any updates. And there is an update. Air traffic controller audio has been released showing that the plane had been given clearance to land. The Weather Channel reported from earlier today warned blowing snow is moving through Toronto with occasional bands of lake effect snow. The wind gusts of 30 to 50 miles an hour pushing through Ontario. These conditions are caused by the leftover influence from Winter Storm Jet. The temperature was a frigid 18 degrees Fahrenheit at the time of the crash. It is not known whether weather played a role in the crash. We have now eyewitnesses report from a passenger on the Delta flight. And I'm going to not show that. It appears that passengers were evacuated through the aircraft's main door, but the slide was not deployed. Emergency crews arrived immediately and began spraying the plane down with foam. How long is this? I'm just yeah, it's the same one that we saw earlier. So thoughts and prayers on each one of those. If you get a chance, go check out Paula Bolliard, managing editor of PJ Media. Follow her on X for media inquiries. Please contact her, Paula B at pjmedia.com. And there it is. There's the news of the morning. That's what I was confused on. I didn't see crumpled metal. If it rolled, it must have had a soft landing. Yeah. It would have been an interesting crash to see. So yes, there is. On most news stations, it looked like landing gear collapsed and the wind flipped it over, tearing off both wings, and 18 were injured. Yeah, that's still pretty damn significant. I mean, if a plane's coming in for a landing, a lot of times these things can burst right into flames, and it could have been a complete loss. So fortunately, that as far as I know, 18 people are injured, but nobody has died from it. So that is pretty impressive that they've managed to do this. Mainstream media, if you watched and haven't seen it, yeah, they don't want to talk about a lot of these things until it comes to a head. They try to hold those beans really close to their chest. They really do. There's a reason for holding it very close. And this is a reminder of how information and disinformation can be spread. Just a reminder. This comes out of Canada.
So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate, but you're not releasing the information. And the actual follow-up is, I'm just wondering whether the bank accounts will be targeted of individuals who donated to the Give, Send, Go and the GoFundMe campaigns. Are they considered designated people under the Emergencies Act, meaning that their credit cards could be cut and financial services are targeting them as well?
Okay, so the names of both individuals and entities, as well as crypto wallets, have been shared by the RCMP with financial institutions, and accounts have been frozen, and more accounts will be frozen. Crowdfunding platforms and payment service providers have started the registration process with FinTrack. In terms of the specifics on whose accounts are being frozen, you now have the regulations. The financial service providers have those regulations as well, and they, working with law enforcement, will be making the operational decisions.
So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen, both personal and corporate. So you're confirming that accounts have been frozen.
Can't handle the truth.
Bless your heart. I thought I was the only mentally challenged one here.
Get it, yeah, oh yeah. Early morning, rise and shine. Coffee's brewing, feeling fine. News is out and on the air. Shizzy Whiz nuts wild, but we don't care. Morning Whiz and Coffee. Talk the news, he's a tease. Laugh it off, we're on the go. Shizzy Whiz nuts, start the show. Let's go. Get it, yeah, oh yeah. Headlines spinning in the breeze. Stupid jokes, he's such a tease. Sip the Java with a smile. Pants are off, but stay a while. Morning Whiz and Coffee. Talk the news, he's a tease. Laugh it off, we're on the go. Shizzy Whiz, let's start the show. Let's go. Get it, yeah, oh yeah. Headlines spinning in the breeze. Stupid jokes, he's such a tease. Sip the Java, wear a smile. Pants are off, but stay a while. Morning Whiz and Coffee. Talk the news, he's a tease. Laugh it off, we're on the go. Shizzy Whiz, let's start the show. Let's go. Get it, yeah, oh yeah. Serious is overrated. Every day we're caffeinated. Talk the town, but in a jest. Morning Whiz is always best. Clock is ticking, time to run. Morning show's a load of fun. Grab your mug, don't spill a drop. Laugh your ass off till you pop. Clock is ticking, time to run. Morning show's a load of fun. Grab your mug, don't spill a drop. Laugh your ass off till you pop.
Oh my god. Shizzy breaks Larry. Shizzy broke Larry.